The Burning Wheel is a medieval-themed, rules-heavy tabletop RPG that was originally published in 2002. A revised printing was released in 2005, then a comprehensive re-release was published in 2011 called The Burning Wheel Gold Edition. Although many people have worked on and contributed to the game, its principal author is Luke Crane. Dan Abram also contributed to the original concept of the Burning Wheel. So what does the Burning Wheel refer to? The name of the game is a reference to the metaphor that is continually revisited throughout the book. It's an abstract metaphor, so bear with me here. The kind of wheel being referred to here is a wagon wheel. The wheel represents your gaming session or campaign, and at the center is the hub. The hub in this game is your character. The player characters are everything in the Burning Wheel, and this is its main thrust. The spokes of the wheel are some of the core mechanics, the abilities, the beliefs, instincts, and traits. These are all tied in directly and inextricably to the player character or hub of each game. Finally, there is the rim of the wheel, which is made up of a series of extra mechanics: steel, resources, relationships, circles, affiliations, reputations, duel of wits, range and cover, fight, weapons, armor, and shields, and so on. And to round off the metaphor, the thing that spins the wheel is Artha points, which are awarded to players. In the words of the author, Artha is, quote, the middle ground between obsession with self, enlightenment, and transcendence. In the game, it helps the character overcome obstacles and eventually hone abilities to mythical levels of excellence. The Burning Wheel is a dice pool system using the D6. You have 6 core stats: will, power, agility, perception, fort, and speed. Each of these has a score ranging from 1 to 10, with limitations in some cases. The higher your score or exponent is in each core stat, the more d6s you can roll for a test. When you test against something, you need to get a 4, 5, or 6 to succeed. However, there are ways to upgrade your stats as well as everything else about your character, like skills, attributes, and spells, to where you only need a 3, 4, 5, or 6 to succeed. You can further upgrade them to where you only fail if you roll a 1. Naturally, these upgrades are expensive and come at the cost of not upgrading other stats and skills over time. Many situations require that you get more than one success on a single roll. This sliding difficulty number is called the obstacle, a sort of difficulty rating for any given situation. The higher the obstacle and fewer number of dice rolled against it means more Artha is rewarded. There are no levels in the Burning Wheel, and for that matter, there are no gold pieces to keep track of necessarily. Instead, you track each individual stat, skill, attribute, and general thing called resource separately. They are leveled up using Artha that is awarded mostly by testing on that particular item. Artha comes in 3 flavors: Fate, Persona, and Deed. Fate points are given out most commonly by the GM to the players, and are given when the players actually play towards their character's stated beliefs, instincts, and traits in interesting ways, or for particularly funny moments. Persona points are earned when a player has a great moment generally, breaks away dramatically from his beliefs, instincts, or traits, accomplishes a stated goal, works hard for the party, or gets voted MVP at the end of the session by other players. Persona points are naturally rarer than Fate points. Deeds Artha points are the rarest of all. They are only earned after a character accomplishes a huge task or goal, something that goes beyond their own gain and required some sort of personal sacrifice on their part. Artha points don't just get put into a stat or skill, they actually have to be spent on a roll involving that stat or skill. So if I had a Fate point that I wanted to put towards leveling up my bow skill, I would actually need to have a situation where my bow is being used, at which time I would announce that I'm spending my Fate point for the roll. The point would then give me a bonus on that roll. Regardless of the outcome of the roll, the Fate point would then be allocated towards my bow skill for future leveling up. Naturally, Fate points give you the weakest bonuses to a roll, whereas Persona points can really change a situation, such as being able to avoid death after a mortal wound. And spending a Deed Artha point confers an extreme benefit to a roll, allowing a reroll or doubling the number of dice rolled. Artha points can also be spent to permanently upgrade a stat or skill to gray or white shade, allowing a higher chance of success on every roll. The author calls the process of character creation character burning. Further metaphor stuff that I can't really explain, but character creation is one of the most interesting parts of this game. What makes it different from a lot of other games is the depth and detail required of you when making a character. It's a 12-step process. Step 1. Character concept. Start with an overall description of your character with just a few words. The only requirements are that they fit with the other PCs and that they fit with the setting. Step 2. Choose your life paths. Life paths in the Burning Wheel are segments of the character's life in the past. Your character starts with anywhere from 3 to 5 or maybe even 6 or 7 life paths under their belt by the time your adventure at the table actually begins. Each life path comes with skills that you can opt into, as well as traits that are more general, hard-coded descriptors of your character. There are hundreds of life paths listed in the Burning Wheel, and each of the 4 races has their own set of life paths. These lists are an extraordinary accomplishment in and of themselves because of the breadth of possibilities to choose from. There are countless combinations of life paths here, which breaks the mold of character classes to some degree. Step 3. Choose your age. Each life path comes with a number of years, so after that is totaled up, you have your age. Step 4. Buy your stats. Depending on your age and race, you are given a certain amount of mental and physical points that you then spend on buying your core stats of will, perception, agility, speed, power, and fort. Step 5. Skills. Some skills that are listed with your life paths are required, and others you can buy with points. There is a point system that I won't delve into here that allows you to buy into new skills and level up the ones you've chosen. It's worth noting that the general skills list in the Burning Wheel is hundreds of items long, most with a surprising amount of detail about obstacle ratings. In fact, the skills list in this book is one of the most outstanding and overwhelming features. Step 6. Traits. Life paths that you've chosen also give you trait points that you use to buy traits. Like skills, there are some required traits that your character needs to take on that come with certain life paths. Step 7. Attributes. There are a handful of other features that your character requires. They are derived from your core stats and sometimes from answering a couple of little questionnaires. Mortal wound. There's some number crunching here, but basically it's the point at which you receive a deadly wound in battle. Reflexes. This will determine your character's ability to react to sudden danger and the like. Health. Like all the other attributes, stats, and skills, this ends up being a single number with a shade of either black, gray, or white. And remember, that number ends up being the number of d6s that you can roll when you are being tested in a relevant situation. Steel. Steel represents a character's internal fortitude. This starts at black 3, but after answering a little questionnaire, your character will either have more or less of this. Emotional attributes. Faith for humans, grief for elves, greed for dwarves, and hatred for orcs. Step 8. Spend resource points. Your chosen life paths also confer to you resource points. You get 15 to 30 points on average to spend on gear, relationships, affiliations, reputations, and spells. Probably the most interesting thing that you'll purchase at this stage are relationships. The game requires that every character have at least one relationship with an NPC of their making, and the GM then weaves that NPC into the plot of the session or campaign. This is cool because it marries the character's pasts and their motivations with the story that everyone is telling at the table. Likewise, affiliations that are purchased can have largely the same effect where everyone's past catches up with them in one way or another. Step 9. Resources and circles ability. Resources represent the general pile of wealth and favors that a character has. This is often a pretty low number to start with, maybe 1 or 2 dice. Circles are a character's sphere of influence, and naturally in an urban or court setting, this will get tested heavily. Step 10. Physical tolerances. This is a table that determines how badly your character is hurt when injured. You chart this with 6 different levels of injury: mortal wound, traumatic, severe, midi, light, and superficial. As you accumulate injuries at any level, you are immediately debilitated. Those debilitations accumulate. The injuries reduce your ability scores harshly, leaving you a shadow of your former self until you can get to a provider of medicine, surgery, or healing. This single mechanic colors the entire game in a very serious light. You can't go around picking fights with every NPC and creature that looks at you wrong. You have to play with great caution. Step 11. Beliefs and instincts. Players choose 1 to 3 beliefs, which are short, specific statements that contain an action and a condition. For example, if I'm creating an orc character, one belief might be, I will kill my chief if he is not successful in the next raid. Or maybe for a human archer, I will avenge my wife's death by bringing the sheriff to justice. It's very open-ended and is completely dependent on the other player characters' backstories as well as the GM's intended story or campaign setting. But beliefs are important because you are rewarded Artha for sticking to them as well as for artfully violating them. Players get 1 to 3 instincts, which are also open-ended statements. These are if-then statements or hard and fast rules that act as automatic actions that your character can take. An example would be something like, I never break bread with dwarves, or if my friends are threatened, I always put myself between them and danger. Instincts are a powerful way to guard against the many dangers and perils that a GM will throw at your character, and can create conditions that make the player GM referee role a two-way street. Step 12. Name your character. The Burning Wheel presents a medieval world that contains 4 races or stocks: humans, dwarves, elves, and orcs. What makes each of them interesting is how each race has its own set of character possibilities and each their own central emotional paradigm. The human race contains 10 different life path settings that collectively contain hundreds of life paths. Their core emotion is faith, which can be tested and leveled up like any other stat or skill. Only humans can take the sorcery skill and open up the 67 sorcerer spells found in the book. Since Burning Wheel doesn't have character levels, its spells are not categorized by level. Instead, each spell has an obstacle value and can be leveled up with Artha earned during gameplay. Like humans, elves have their own set of special and exclusive traits, and they bear the emotional attribute of grief. What is strange about grief is that when it reaches exponent 10, your elven character is for all intents and purposes finished. They wander off into the horizon or waste away. Thus, their grief attribute is like a timer, ticking away until the character expires and you can't play them anymore. For magic, elves use the power of song, with access to 33 very elven-y song spells that do miraculously empathic things like heal or forge friendships or wow an audience. Dwarves in the Burning Wheel have 6 very colorful life path settings to choose from, and are as distinct from humans and elves as could be in terms of their default traits. They must bear the emotional attribute of greed, the starting value of which is determined after answering an entertaining questionnaire. Once greed reaches 10, the dwarf goes mad, so basically it's another ticking time bomb like the grief with elves. Each dwarf character must contend with their greed as a central component to their character, as well as an oath that they either swear or break at the outset. They bring with them superior gear, strong stats, and a powerful set of skills called dwarven arts. Orcs in this book are described as vessels of hatred, with heinous starting traits and the pathway to dark magic called Void Embrace. The Void Embrace skill allows an orc, whose core emotion is hatred, to have spells called Rituals of Blood and Night. There are only a handful of these rituals, but each of them have remarkable potential to transform the orc or allow them to summon terrible creatures. Although barely mentioned in the book, there is a way for orcs to escape their hatred, an informal mechanism that would allow them to become characters more compatible with human, elf, and dwarf characters in a party. An orc character's journey away from hatred is itself the fodder for a great personal journey to play out at the table. Even by the admission of the author, the extra mechanics that he describes as the rim of the wheel are not 100% necessary to play the game, but each of them is very intricately detailed, and if introduced to your table over time, can add new dimension to the overall experience. Some of the more involved mechanics include range and cover, duel of wits, the various magics, and perhaps 2 of the most important, fighting and injury recovery. The duel of wits, range and cover, and fight mechanics all have separate worksheets that you fill out and refer to when reconciling a conflict. These little mini games definitely work and they are interesting to read, but in my opinion, they're not the most compelling features of the Burning Wheel. There's always the option to have the simple versus tests that make things faster at the table, or dare I say it, use your own fight mechanic. One more thing to note is the physical book. If you get your hands on a copy of the Burning Wheel Gold Edition, you will immediately see and feel something familiar, at least for some of you. The book is sized and weighted like a Bible. This is an interesting choice by the creators because it very intentionally gives a sense of sacredness to the text. Fortunately, the pages themselves are thicker than a Bible's pages, so there is a sturdiness there, but overall the effect is the same. Don't get me wrong, I don't think this is a game worthy of worship, but I do think that the physical book earns its form factor as a little gold-covered Bible. It's a remarkable work, not just in terms of a game that truly puts the RP in RPG, but also as a creative written work. The portrait of each race as described through traits and magic and gear are familiar but still novel somehow, and memorable. And the exhaustive lists of skills and life paths are a joy to read all their own. So there you have it, folks. This book has been around for a while now, but I wanted to do my own rundown of it because it has its own special meaning to me. Luke Crane has since published a 560-page supplement to this book called the Burning Wheel Codex, which delves deeper into secondary mechanics of the game. I've put links to everything below. Thanks for watching. This is Dave signing off. See ya.